And welcome back to the Ghost and Friends YouTube channel, guys. Thanks for being here. Go get with my good friend, Mr. John Williams of Locked On Sooners. Not his first appearance on the channel. How we doing, brother John?
Hey, doing great. It's week 0. College football is officially here, so it couldn't be any better.
It could. I mean, as Jared Tetley just said, we're here. We are indeed at week 0. There is live action that counts towards standings, playoff chases, everything starting, this weekend. I cannot wait. Farmageddon obviously has my eye on Saturday. Missed the Big 12 conference. I will say that.
Me too. It's okay. It's okay to admit it. The Big 12 was fun.
I fully agree, man. And matchups like K-State, Iowa State, why they're playing in Ireland, I don't know. But it's great for college football. It's going to be fantastic. Seeing all of my Iowa State and Kansas State Twitter friends that we made in a couple of years, seeing them go across the pond and have some Guinness and get ready to watch college football. I'm very envious, but and very happy for those guys as well. So yeah, welcome, John. Thanks for being here. Obviously, you're doing great work with Locked On Sooners, providing fantastic coverage over there. For any Sooners watching, if you don't know who John is, you're out of the loop. Check out Locked On Sooners and all their good work over there. But yeah, let's get to it, John. We are here, week 0, which no action for our teams, but that changes very, very quickly. Texas, Oklahoma, they get on the field, and all of the talk from throughout the summer, everything that we've heard, all the fears we may have, the confidence we may have, we find out if all of that is legit or if, we want to believe what feels good to believe. Me personally, I'm going to tell you what I think a little bit about Oklahoma really, really quickly and see if your thoughts maybe coincide a little bit, and maybe you can tell me where I'm wrong. But I do love the defensive front seven, John. I mean, you look at that as very deep, especially on the defensive line. I'm not sure if the top end talent on that defensive line is going to be a top 2 or 3 defensive line in the SEC. But when you add in the depth, that's where I really think Oklahoma's line, it belongs in conversation amongst the premier defensive lines in the SEC. But for yourself, a little bit more about that defensive line and that front seven. How are the Sooners feeling about what they're going to be putting out on the field?
Yeah, absolutely great. Like, this is the best defensive front that Oklahoma's had in a long, long, long time. Definitely during Brent Venables' tenure. And it starts with R. Mason Thomas, a guy that had 9 sacks last year, 6 of which came in SEC play. And then you go into the interior, which is a huge strength for Oklahoma. They've got 4 guys that can legitimately play SEC football. Jaden Jackson was a true freshman All-American last year, and by all accounts, he's getting even better. Like, the strength that the guy has at the interior. I know Texas fans are well acquainted with him from his time as a recruit, guy that was going back and forth between Oklahoma and Texas for a time.
Mm-hmm.
The dude is just a stud, man. He is legit. And he's one of those guys that you can build your defensive line around because you know that he's going to hold up at the point of attack. He can eat up double teams. And because he's got the agility and the quickness to match with his size and strength, he can be a force on all 3 downs. Dominic Williams, another defensive tackle that was a transfer portal addition, again, back and forth between Oklahoma and Texas, and throw LSU into the mix there, coming over from TCU. Didn't necessarily have the splash plays that you would have liked for him to have last year, but year 2 in Brent Venables' system, another offseason in the strength and conditioning program. Everybody's expecting him to have a bigger season than he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then David Stone, the former 5-star defensive tackle, everybody's expecting the breakout to come this year. And he, by all accounts, has looked really, really good, both in spring and fall, and is really trending toward a really strong season. And then Grayson Halton, can't forget the veteran. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, hasn't participated in fall camp, but a lot of people are expecting him to be ready for at least the Michigan game. He had 5 sacks last year from that 3 technique defensive tackle position. So it's a defensive line that is going to be a strength for the Oklahoma Sooners. Have to still figure out who's going to be the starter at the strong side defensive end spot. But Marvin Jones Jr. coming over from Florida State, had 5 sacks last year, a former 5-star prospect, spent time at Georgia, then Florida State, now at Oklahoma. And they're also, he's competing with a guy named Taylor Wine, who has been one of the most talked about guys in spring ball and fall camp. Big size, 6'6", 270 frame, and looks the part of a strong side defensive end. So a lot of optimism about Oklahoma's defensive front being able to reproduce what they did last year, which allowed them to be really competitive in games that they probably shouldn't have been because the offense was so terrible.
No, I mean, I fully agree with you. You talk about the defense last year, I mean, you look at just obviously we'll go to the Texas game. You're in that football game strictly due to the defense.
Mhm.
Turned over Quinn Ewers early. Put the offense in some pretty favorable field position a couple of times there, and you never converted. And then the offense turns the ball over a couple times, and I mean that defense was better than a lot of the scores suggested. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so they had a very tough matchup with South Carolina a week after that. Like there's some really good offenses and quarterbacks in the SEC. They're going to make some really good defenses look not quite as strong in spurts, for a moment here or there. And so, yeah, obviously Brent Venables knows defense. He's going to be able to, you know, have the understanding of like I had elite defensive lines at Clemson, and that's how I won titles. And so obviously, he's going to try to replicate that with Oklahoma. Personally, I think as the season goes, that Wine probably takes over that strong side defensive end over Marvin. I really like him as a prospect, and again, I see a lot and hear a lot, maybe the same things you are. And I think as the season goes, that would be one random projection I have for your defense is that I do think he. Not that Marvin Jones Jr. isn't going to get a ton of run out there. Obviously, very talented in his own right. Personally, I think Grayson Halton is the big true prize of all the prospects that you just went through, or players that you just I fanatic of that kid. I mean, he's
great.
He really is. You talked about five sacks from a 3 technique, like that. That's special stuff. Really close to having a few more, and that's not even really what they're asking you to do out of that spot. Just an added benefit when you're able to get the quarterback down to the ground. So yeah, big fan of that. Obviously, a hamstring injury, that's something that can linger. You don't want to see that. So yeah, just have him right by the Michigan game because obviously you got a little bit of a little test, not so much of a tester rather in the opener. But let's talk about the secondary. I know there's still some battles, at safety in particular. Is there a lot of confidence there? How are we feeling at cornerback 2 in particular? Because that going into camp would have been an outsider's worries, and my worries rather, about the Sooner defense.
Yeah, specifically at cornerback, that was probably the biggest question mark on the defense and maybe even on the team. An area that holds so much importance, so much value, and there was not really a lot of certainty. We knew Eli Bowen was going to be back, Gentry Williams was going to be back, but both are battling injuries. Gentry Williams has been great when he's been on the field. It's just because of the physical nature in which he plays the game, his shoulder has had a hard time holding up. By all accounts, he's healthy. He's ready to roll. He's looking good out in fall camp. So you're expecting that he's going to be a starter. He was a part of that 2022 recruiting class that was Brent Venables' first after arriving in Norman, was a 4-star prospect out of the Tulsa area and is a very, very, very talented guy. Just got to keep him on the field. Eli Bowen's not going to be available for the start of the season, it sounds like, but you have some really impressive options out there. Again, by all accounts, everything is looking really good at cornerback with the competition that they've had. Former 4-star prospects in Jacoby Johnson and Cortland Guillory, Jeremiah Newcomb, guys and Devon Jordan. All of those guys have made some noise in fall camp, and it sounds like it's a legit competition, whereas you're not looking for like the best of some bad options. You're looking for the best of some good options. And I think that's a good place for Oklahoma to be in. Still some question marks. They've got some things that they've got to prove because at times the cornerback position was a bit of a letdown. You go back to that Missouri game, and even though Eli Bowen had played well, gave up some big plays in that game. You had Jacoby Johnson fall down on a couple of plays that allowed Missouri to get into scoring position. Again, it's a position that's got something to prove, but they're totally relying on recruited prospects. Nobody in the cornerback room, nobody in the safety room is a transfer portal addition. These are all homegrown guys that this staff has recruited. So they're very confident in the development that's taken place. And they believe that these guys are going to shine and they're going to step up and show out. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the SEC. And so these guys are going to give up plays from time to time. It's how do they bounce back? What kind of a play do they give? Is it a big play? Are they getting burnt because of a blown coverage? Or is it just, hey man, we just got beat because Ryan Williams is really good, or Ryan Wingo is a really good football player. We just got beat. That's just the way it's going to go. At safety, again, it's a very, very talented group, and it's one of the deepest positions on the team. Robert Spears-Jennings is back, and that's a dude he thrives within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, is improving his coverage game, but he's super athletic. He was featured on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list earlier this month. Just fast, physical presence. Peyton Bowen, the former 5-star prospect out of Denton Guyer, another guy that, again, people are expecting to break out, but it goes beyond that. So secondary is a bit of a question, but I think everybody's expecting it. If Oklahoma's defensive front and the front 7 are as good as they were last year, it makes it a little bit less of a question because, as you know, like that pass rush, if he can get to the quarterback and get him off his spot or make him get rid of the ball quicker, that helps the secondary out so much more.
Yeah, really well said there. A quality pass rush, not having to send 5, 6, 7 guys on, often, obviously that goes a long way. If you can send 4, get to the quarterback, naturally your back 7 will be better in coverage. You can do more if you're able to get pressure with fewer guys sent. And so, obviously that's the blueprint for college football. That's what you want to do,
Yeah.
especially as you just said against Ryan Williams and the plethora of great receivers in this conference and the solid OCs and quarterbacks who are going to scheme you to death if you're not careful. And so, like you said, this is a man's league. You're gonna make plays, but you're gonna have plays made against you, even
Well,
if you're in a really good position at times.
yeah, and the trick against like a Steve Sarkisian offense is, he's not necessarily going to just be like, my guy is better than your guy and go about it that way. Like he's going to scheme some things up to take advantage of the elite athletes and get them in space and get them into open territory where they can catch and run.
Of
For
course.
Oklahoma, it's like, don't get so confused by all that you're giving Ryan Wingo 20 yards of open space to run with. So that's going to be the challenge. Is like Oklahoma's got talented players. It's a matter of, are they going to be able to read and see things properly and not give up too much in the misdirection game? Because Steve Sarkisian's fantastic at that. And that's where Oklahoma got burnt a couple times in the game last year, is just over pursuit or not seeing the backside guy coming off in the misdirection.
Right. No, well said. That's obviously a thing we love about Sarkisian is we, for a very, very long time, did not make football look very easy on the offensive side. Throwing some stats out there just in different group chats and stuff that I've seen. I think our leading rusher in 2017 had 387 yards, and that was Sam Ellinger. And so, just seeing plays designed like, wow, we just picked up 15 yards, and like we it didn't really look like we did much there. It's a simple little concept. Obviously, we schemed it up and had repped that all week long just to pick up those 3 yards. And so it is nice, and I definitely other people can see that Sark has a bit of a mastermind on the offensive side of the ball. But sometimes it is just that. It's just seeing through, the chaos. It's the window dressing that Sarkisian and Lincoln Riley and some of these coaches really, really love to do. They dress it all up, and then they're running a very simple concept out of all that. And so I can't wait to see what Texas and Sarkisian throw at Matt Patricia and Ohio State Caleb Downs led defense as far as the looks that they give, because I know it's going to be exotic. But back to Oklahoma real quick, brother. It sounds like in the secondary, you have bodies similar, like you're saying you have on the defensive line, and particularly at strong side edge. You just need guys to go prove it. And this is still a little bit of talking season. Every school has done a lot of talking, and more so than ever in college football. And this isn't just for your school or for Texas A&M or for Texas, for everybody. It's prove it season. There's more turnover on these rosters than we've ever had before. Less and less continuity throughout college football. Coaches bouncing all around, taking NFL jobs. I kind of understand it. It's more grueling to be a college football coach than ever, especially as a head coach. It's got to be the most demanding coaching position in all of sports, from my opinion. But it is prove it time. And so I understand, why Oklahoma has the confidence that they do, why there is some hype coming out of Norman, and the national media, is also running with it as well. Because my school as well, we're very, very confident. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, and we have several guys that we believe and expect them to go and replicate what we saw out of the Texas defense in that spot last year. But it's not a guaranteed. It's not a written. It's not anything that's for certain. And so I'm not here to dog on the hype that Oklahoma has. I will say that I have seen some 9-win, 10-win predictions. Are you that confident, John? And the biggest pause I would have before discussing that, in my book, would just be the fact that the schedule is so dang nasty. I do like the Michigan game and how it sets up for you. But as far as a win total, before we get to the offensive side of the ball, I think defense carries you guys. But as far as the win total goes, kind of where's your mind at? What's a really good year, a successful year for the Sooners and Brent Venables?
Yeah, I've seen some places like a Dusty Dvorak talk about how an 8-4 season would be considered good. And I kind of scuff at that a little bit, because that's not Oklahoma football, right? If Oklahoma went out and had an 8-4 season and the head coach was like, man, that was a great year, Texas fans would kill us for that, right? Like that would not be considered a good season. 8-4 to me is the floor. get to 8-4, I think is very doable. It's reasonable. And then if you get some breaks, the ball bounces your way a few times because it's a game of inches and it's going to be a lot of close football games this year. 10-2 is not outside of the realm of possibility. I know that a lot of folks want to think that that's crazy coming out of the 6-7 season a year ago. But if you look back on that year, we were a reasonably healthy and average offense away from being an 8-win team. This was a team that was leading Ole Miss at halftime. This was a team that was in the Tennessee game for the majority of that first half before we kind of let a big play get away from us. This was a team that, again, beat Alabama. We were in the LSU game, just couldn't get anything going offensively consistently in those games. And especially in the second half against Ole Miss, because you're playing a lot of inexperience along the offensive line, that legit Ole Miss pass rush full of NFL defensive linemen took advantage, and you couldn't do anything to stop them. And so your offense just sputtered towards the end of the game. But if Oklahoma's offense is good this year, they're going to be a 9-win team threatening for a 10-win team because this defense is so good. It doesn't have to be all on the offense. This isn't the Lincoln Riley days where Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts got to go put up 60 to win a football game or 40 to win a football game. No, they can win some 30-23 games or some 24-14 games because this defense is so good. So this is a team, and the reason that there's so much confidence about it is it's a team that can play complementary football. It's not going to be solely reliant on one side of the ball or the other, similar to a Texas team, right? With all of the turnover that Texas is facing along the offensive line, 4 new starters, a new starting quarterback, although Arch has some starting experience, new lead receivers at wide receiver, guys that I love. Ryan Wingo is one of my favorite players to watch in college football because the dude's so dynamic with the ball in his hands. There's still a lot of turnover, but because that defense is going to be so good, Steve Sarkisian can look at his offense and be like, hey, we don't have to do it all. We don't have to do everything. And the same is true for Brent Venables and the offense at Oklahoma. He can look at John Mateer and be like, listen, it's okay to punt it away every once in a while. We don't have to do everything every single drive. If it's not there, just eat the ball, punt it. We'll get him the next time because the defense is going to give you the ball back. So just trust that and play complementary football. Oklahoma gave the ball away so many times last year. You talked about the Texas game, the South Carolina game, the Tennessee game. I mean, we get the ball on the 5-yard line, 1st and goal at the 5, and give it right back the next play. That's losing football. And of course, you're going to go 6-7 when that happens. Protect the football, a reasonable amount of health, a good offense, and this team has a chance to do something special this year.
Okay, so you got 8-4 as the floor. Coming off the 6-7 season, 10-2 is the ceiling. And, I mean, I respect the confidence, man. I really, really do. Because like you said, I'm you in 2022, Texas just went 5-7, 2023 rather, 5-7 followed up by 8-4. And, I mean, we lost 6 straight games in 2021. And I think 5 of the 6 we led at halftime. And 4 of those 5 we led by double digits at halftime. And, it's like, okay, that's kind of hard to stomach, obviously, but you can appreciate, that there is something there. Now, our problem was you're talking about the defensive side of the ball being the strength last year. Ours was the offensive side of the ball. If we had any type of competent defense right here, we don't lose to Kansas at DKR. We don't lose to Baylor. You know what I mean? And so, man, those were painful days. And so for me now, it's like going into 2022, I'll be honest. I said 8-4 that's what I predicted. Now, did I have Texas fans who were like, "What the hell is wrong with you? You're not a Texas guy. That's not Texas football." And I was, yeah, but we just don't have the guys. We really don't. We're not as talented as everyone wants to pretend that we were at that time. Yeah, we had a Bijan Robinson, but we had a Quinn Ewers who hadn't played football essentially for 2.5, 3 years. Via injury, leaving early, and then sitting a year at Ohio State. We had an offensive line that was young and coming together, and so. Honestly, I think y'all are built and better to have a bigger type of bounce back between those 2 years, and than what we had from 2021 to 2022. So again, I'm not hating the confidence. I really don't. The schedule is the big hang up for me. the offensive line, is where I start to have questions. Do you have the confidence and the depth on the offensive line, that you do in the defensive line? So moving to that side of the football, there's been a lot of talk about battles at 4 or 5 positions on that offensive line. I honestly thought, coming into the season, coming into camp, that Mike Fasusi would get a real grab on the left tackle job. It sounds like he might be trending that way. But if you care to update us on the offensive line and then just kind of how you think, or feel about this group and how things play out with them.
Yeah, so it does sound like, according to a guy like Gabe Eichert, who played at Oklahoma, is part of the Oklahoma radio broadcast crew.
All-American.
Yeah, All-American, gets a lot more access than a lot of people do because of his relationship with Brent Venables. I mean, he thinks that still 4 of the 5 offensive line jobs are up for grabs. And it's not, again, it's one of those good problems because people are playing so well. You have a Michael Fasusi who Bill Bedenbaugh just speaks the world of. Like, he talks about him and Ryan Foje, the right guard, as true freshmen that are 2 of the best that he's ever had. And he doesn't throw that kind of praise around lightly. These guys are just showing out, and they have since spring. Like, they were impressive in spring, and they've just continued to keep the ball rolling on that front, both from a physicality standpoint, a mental standpoint, and just understanding what they're supposed to be doing out there. So it wouldn't surprise me to see those guys push for opportunities this year. It seems unlikely because, again, they're true freshmen, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. But you're also banking on the fact that guys that, like a Jacob Sexton, who has dealt with injuries his entire Oklahoma career, is going to be able to stay healthy. I'm not so confident in that. Now, he's projected to be your left tackle. Again, I'm not confident that he's going to be able to play a full season. But if your backup option is Michael Fasusi, I think you're feeling pretty good about it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then at center, you've got a very experienced guy in Troy Everett, who's being pushed by another veteran center in Jake Michael, who came over from Stanford. Again, if Troy Everett is your center, you feel really good about that. He played good football down the stretch, was a part of that big Alabama win. If he's not your starter, it's because somebody went and took his job and showed that they were better. And that's an okay place to be as well. So I think it's one of those, like, you got good problems happening along the offensive line, whereas last year you were going into the season with like your 3rd center. And by week 2, you had to play your 4th center.
Right.
And, by the Texas game, I mean, you're down so many guys that you're starting dudes that have never played college football before by the time you get to Ole Miss. And so it was such a mess last year because there were so many injuries. Yeah, you have Jacob Sexton, who's dealing with a concussion, Derek Simmons, who's dealing with a concussion. Those are your projected right tackles right now. But if they're not available, you've got experience to kind of fall back on at right tackle. And then you've got a 5-star true freshman in Michael Fasusi, who by all accounts is living up to the expectations so far, that if those aren't your tackles, then you're probably feeling okay because those guys have proven capable of stepping in. Offensive line is still a question. I don't think anybody's going to be out there gaslighting anybody else and saying, no, we are 100% confident in the offensive line. But I think, again, it comes back to your offense doesn't have to be everything for you. If the offense can go from averaging 23 points per game to 30 points per game, that gives Oklahoma the chance to win so many more football games this year than what they did a year ago. And if you look at SEC play, this offense only averaged 13 points per game in SEC play when you take the defensive scores off the table. That's how bad it was. And so, again, you're only a respectable or a good offense, a respectable offensive line, a good offensive line away from this offense really taking off. And even if it's not perfect, you've got a quarterback that's a lot more decisive and a lot more capable of handling situations that aren't perfect than what we had a year ago.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, and you add in a quarterback who I think probably plays his best football when in backyard football, broken down plays, situations that helps an offensive line as well. You have less pressure, because no offense to Michael Hawkins, I'm a fan of that young man. But just a bit of a deer in the headlights, look in the moments. Yeah, and it's just not ready. Again, you had many guys on the offensive side of the football who were tossed into the fire much earlier than they probably, should have been. But it is what it is. They had to be out there. You have to have somebody out there to compete. So, I get the Gabe Eichert point, and you talk about quality battles and having quality depth, and I mean, to me, the only question I would have is, does this hurt, continuity going into
Yep.
a season? Do you want to have, but again, there's still time here. They probably pick their guys, and you might have one swing guy and you give them all the work with ones, and with that swing guy getting a couple looks in there as well. I'm curious to see what it plays out as. Obviously Bill Bedenbaugh knows a thing or two about competent offensive line play. And so as much as I enjoyed last year, as much fun as I had with the little jokes here and there, not going too overboard, don't want to get my Sooners too mad at me, but I don't want that going down the line. I don't like Oklahoma football being a cellar dweller. I don't think that's best for college football or what's best for the the Red River Shootout. And yes, I'm always going to say shootout. I do I want Oklahoma to be, national championship worthy every year? Absolutely not, because it adds a new level of, a different level of stress to that second Saturday in October, and I've already dealt with that with Bob Stoops, in the early 2000s. So I don't want Oklahoma to look the way that they did. I don't think that they do. I know that you have been a big advocate of the saying, if just because Oklahoma went, 6-7 last year, you expect them to look the exact same this year. That's very naive and shallow thinking. And I do agree with you. You had a lot of turnover top to bottom. This is a absolute must-win year for Brent Venables. And again, injuries did play a big part in things that went down last year, as well as a bit of a mess with Seth Luttrell, Jackson Arnold, that kind of spiraled out of control in a really quick manner. So this is a completely different program, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Last year, mostly an outlier. I'm not writing Oklahoma off. I know the defense is going to be really, really good, really, really good. I have to concede that my floor is much lower. I do have more of a 6-6 floor. I will explain this to you. I will give you my nightmare scenario and then dream scenario. If I was an Oklahoma fan, nightmare scenario, we're looking at a 6-6 floor. We start off really, really hot. We take care of a Michigan team in week 2, a Bryce Underwood, who is getting, just adequated to college football, and has to go into the Palace and see a nasty Oklahoma Brent Venables defense. You get a lot of hype. You start 3-0. You drop that Auburn game. Obviously Texas gets you there in Red River, and you just kind of, the offensive line spirals out of control, because that is my one big fear I have for Oklahoma and Brent Venables. You can't figure out what you need to in the secondary cornerback, and you give up some more plays. You're going to play in a lot of close ball games, in my opinion, and it's just whether you win or lose them. And so that would be the nightmare scenario, the 6-6. Obviously, you're probably looking at a new coach in that spot. I don't really like that, because I think Venables is an A+ guy. I really, really do. And then I think best case scenario spot, you're looking at a defense that is really, really good. You start off, 5-0 heading into Red River. You give Texas everything that you want, and we all know that everything and anything goes in that game. And then again, you're battling week in, week out against quality opponents. Going to have to be very, very consistent, play great football to get to 10 wins. But I mean, I honestly think 9 wins for me would be best case. But again, the team better than I do. And I'm not going to say they have no depth, but depth is, to me, is a very big part of it, because that schedule does get tougher and tougher as it goes down the road. But that front seven, man, and you play good defense, it's going to keep you in a lot of dang ball games. I mean, you look at Texas last year in the offense, we had a very average offense, in my opinion, that was carried by a very, very good coordinator and an experienced offensive line, and the strong hands of Gunnar Helm and Matthew Golden. And so, quarterback play was inconsistent. Offensive line play was inconsistent. But what was consistent about that program? Defense was elite week in, week out. And when you're not giving up points, it's really, really hard to kind of get ran away from in a football game. So, I'm not writing Oklahoma off. That's just my thoughts, John. I want you to have that just so you know where my mind is at. I'm probably more of a believer than most Texas fans as far as what OU can do. I know that the depth isn't, it's not a Texas, what we have at the moment, or maybe even a Georgia on the defensive side of the ball. But when you talk about the turnover that Oklahoma's had in the last couple of years, I mean, the defensive line depth is well above average. I will definitely say that. Talk to me about Michigan, man. Are you as confident in Oklahoma bringing Michigan into Norman there with Bryce Underwood early? Still a pretty good bit of turnover on that defense for Sharon Moore. I think they'll be pretty dang nasty about come October, November. But how do you feel about Michigan? A really cool game for both programs.
I feel pretty confident in that one. It's going to be a tough matchup. Like, it's going to be an SEC preview, because it's going to be a game won in the trenches. If Oklahoma's offensive line is able to hold up against Michigan's defensive front reasonably well, it doesn't have to have a clean slate kind of a game, doesn't have to keep John Mateer, completely away from pressure or completely off his back, but a reasonable performance. Again, just give him enough time to make a decision. Then I think Oklahoma's going to win that one. I think the line last I saw was sitting like 3.5, which to me is basically a coin flip. It's a pick 'em game because Oklahoma's at home,
Right.
but I like where Oklahoma's at going into that one. Even if they start the veteran transfer that came in from Fresno State against Oklahoma, I still feel good about that because he's not going to have played against a defense quite like a Brent Venables defense that's going to throw a lot at him. I think it's a game that will be one of those performances that Oklahoma can hang their hat on to start the season and give them a lot of confidence going forward. And you kind of talked about the offensive line wanting to have some continuity and some chemistry. And I think we'll see them go with whoever they start week 1. We'll go with week 2, but between the Michigan game and then the Auburn Texas games, the offensive lines could look a little bit different because they play Temple, they play Kent State, they play Auburn.
Right.
And so the unit that starts week 2 against Michigan could be different than the unit that starts against Texas on the second Saturday there in October. So, there's a lot of reasons to be confident, but they got to go prove it, man. And I think even though I am optimistic, even though I am confident that this team can go out and pull off a 9-10 win season, they've got to go do it. They've got to play a really good Texas team. They've got to play a really good Alabama team on the road, a Tennessee team that, listen, if we were getting Joey Aguilar in the first month or 2 of the season, I'd feel a little bit better about it. If we're getting him in November, that's going to be, or maybe it's late October. I can't remember exactly which one that is, but at that point of the season, he's going to be a much better quarterback in Josh Heupel's system than he will be week 1 or 2. Right. So I feel good about Oklahoma's schedule, even though that second half of the season is going to be tough. You're still dealing with teams like an Ole Miss team that turned over so much from their 9-win team. And again, a team that Oklahoma, the worst Oklahoma team in 25 years, was beating at halftime. So yes, the schedule on paper, statistically, it looks tough, but I don't know if it's going to actually turn out to be as tough as it seems because, as you mentioned, there's been so much turnover in the SEC, in particular at the quarterback position. Oklahoma is only playing 2 guys that started the season as the starting quarterback for their team last year. And that's Garrett Nussmeier at LSU and Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. And even there, at South Carolina and with LSU, there's questions about the defenses. So even though you might feel great about the Gamecocks and Tigers offenses, you're not so sure what you're going to get out of the defenses this year. And so it's one of those things where so much of it's just going to come down to the breaks. Who gets the bounces? Who gets the breaks? And we saw last year in the SEC, just because you're one of the better teams in the conference doesn't mean that you're susceptible or not susceptible to an upset or getting pushed by a Vanderbilt team if you're Texas, or losing to a terrible Oklahoma team if you're Alabama. So I think so much of it is parity is actually taking hold of the sport and it's hit the SEC. So any given Saturday, a lot of things can happen. You just got to hope that the breaks fall on your side of the equation that day.
Well said, brother. I think parity has taken over college football, college basketball. It's very much so a part of the SEC now. I get called a closet OU fan for being nice to my OU guests. Thank you, Papa Kyle, for holding true to character. I did say their floor was lower than what John did, brother.
He did.
Gamer Mac, welcome back to the channel, my man. Oklahoma will have a better season than Texas this year. I'm just glad you're here, Gamer Mac. We'll see very, very shortly. We're all a little bit delusional in the college football world.
That's college football.
You got to be.
What are we here for?
Not having any fun if you're not a little bit delulu out here. I have too many kids. I just said delulu on YouTube and Twitter. But yeah, hey, appreciate y'all being here, guys. Like this video, sub to the channel if you have not. Got a lot of fun stuff planned. Dropping another new team member here later today. So always fun news. Going to have some more SEC coverage. So we'll have that dropped. But yeah, if you don't mind, like the video. If you're watching on Twitter, hop over to YouTube. Like and sub, quick and easy. It's free, costs you nothing. Jared Tetley says 7-5. Jared, that's probably going to be what I have. But would I be shocked to see a 9-3? Honestly, I wouldn't, because for the reasons that John is saying, it's a game of inches, man. It's a game of inches. Anything can go down. And there are plenty of questions about other teams in the SEC. one thing that I am big time fearful for, my brother. I gotta lay this out for you because I think this is really, really dirty. But you have Texas October 11th. Won't be easy. Obviously, you guys get Kent State the week before while we go to the
Mhm.
swamp. So I think that's cool for y'all. It's a bit of an advantage. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's an advantage, no doubt
It
about it.
is. It
Yeah.
is. And big physical battle with
Mhm.
the Gators. I think it's cool. Last year we had OU Georgia back-to-back weeks. I think Texas's schedule is a little bit more difficult than people want to say it is when you consider road trips
Yep.
to
100%.
Athens, Columbus. We have another big one in there somewhere. Who am I missing? Maybe it's not a big one. Anyway, so I the way that game is laid out, I don't think that to say that Texas, is just going to roll Oklahoma the way that we did last year, the way that we did in 2022 would be pretty lazy and naive, as we've kind of talked about before. But I, Texas on the 11th, South Carolina on the 18th. So saying you did that dance already. Personally, my favorite quarterback that's not being talked about much in the SEC is Austin Simmons. I think Austin's going to have a fantastic year. So yes, you do say, he was not the starter last year. I think he's going to be very comparable to Jackson Dart. Not as far as necessarily in their skill set, but as far as production in that offense. So Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and then you turn around and you get Tennessee and Knoxville. That's a hell of a 4-game stretch, and I'm here to say that I think that is as tough as any 4-game stretch potentially in college football, just because you have one game in Norman throughout that run.
Mhm.
But during this whole time that we're talking about, we're not playing one game at DKR, man. They took both of our schools in the month of October, and they said, "Watch this. Let's see how y'all handle some road." And which they kind of did this to y'all last year. You're like, "Welcome to the party, man. We had this dance last year, this nasty schedule." But talk to me right here, Mr. Richard Forrest. How many games would Brent Venables need to win this year in order to not be on the hot seat? I think that's a question that could have a varying answers, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say, brother.
I think 8 keeps him safe, like legitimately safe. If he's 7-5, there might be some really difficult conversations. So much of it's going to depend on how willing Oklahoma's able to, or how willing they are to pay the buyout. I mean, it's going to be 35 million after the end of the year. That's huge. And
Big buyout.
I have people telling me that the boosters, if they want to make a move, that's not going to be an issue. So, Oklahoma is not a thing, but I don't see them finishing worse than 8-4. And that's the thing is, so I don't necessarily buy the hot seat talk. And I think part of the confidence in Oklahoma is the confidence that Brent Venables is the guy and he's going to be here for a while. Like, yes, the 2024 season happened. Yes, they went 6-7. Yes, it was terrible, but there's so much extenuating circumstances regarding that it's easy to kind of write off what happened offensively. But Brent Venables has done what he needed to do on the defensive side of the ball. He's got them trending toward an elite defense. And if the offense is respectable, if the offense is anything close to what it was in 2023 when they finished top 5 in the nation, this is a team that's going to be really, really good this year. And so I don't have much concern about whether there's going to be hot seat talk or not. Now, of course, there will be because the media loves it. But I just think that they're going to be a good enough team for him to avoid any of that by the end of the year. Now, there are going to be fans out there and even some media personalities that will say that 8-4 is not good enough and they need to move on from the coach. And sure, I get that. I just don't see that being a legitimate thing that happens unless whoever the new athletic director comes in and just wants to start fresh with whoever his guy is. I just don't see a refresh after an 8-4 season, especially don't see one if it's 9 or 10 wins.
Oh no, absolutely. You win 8+ games. I don't think you're worried about anything. My buddy Dave, I must defend myself. I just said that I think it is a bit of an advantage for you guys to have Kent State the week before Red River while we have Florida, and that our schedule was more difficult than alluded to by most media. Definitely not in the same realm of Oklahoma's schedule. I have to say that is not. You know me. I would never go down that road.
It's not the cakewalk it was. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a cakewalk, but it looks a lot tougher this year because Vandy's better, Florida's better. Everybody's
right.
expecting Mississippi State to be better. Now,
Yep.
Ohio State, it's not the same team that they were last year, but it's similar in that you played Michigan coming off of a national title with a bunch of turnover. You're playing Ohio State coming off of a national title with a bunch of turnover. So that's about the same. So I mean, you go to College Station this year, so that's a
No,
little
they
bit more.
come.
Okay, so
They
they
come
come to
here.
DKR. So, but I think they're going to be better than what they were last year too. So I think the Texas schedule, and I'll have to give my friend Andre Jackson on Twitter a little bit of love for this. He pointed it out that Texas's schedule is a little bit tougher than people want to give it credit for. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Looking at it, it's not necessarily as difficult as maybe Florida's or Oklahoma's, but it's definitely tougher than what people want to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And while I do think that Ohio State is going to be a much tougher opponent for Texas than Michigan was, just because I think in the trenches are a little bit better. Um, on the offensive side of the football, I think a lot better. Michigan really did not have much of a chance. Obviously, the quarterback situation, should be a little bit better, and then their skill positions at wide receiver. I think Ohio State can challenge us much more than Michigan, but I agree. It looks very, very similar. Coordinator changes on both sides of the football. Offensive line coach, DC. I mean, it was just won a national title, was a huge part of it. Jim Knowles did a lot of great things in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and then obviously in Columbus as well. And so how does that look? If we played Ohio State in November, the same way if we'd have played Michigan in November last year, it's going to be two completely different matchups. Same thing with you guys in Michigan this year. And so I think it's definitely slightly more difficult. You talk about going to the swamp and DJ Lagway compared to Florida coming here and DJ being hurt. And of course, that schedule came out last year. We didn't know that DJ would be hurt, but yeah, it looks more difficult. So whoever Mr. Jackson is, I like that guy. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate you defending our schedule.
That's a long time interaction I've had from my days covering the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah,
there we go.
Good dude.
There we go.
Big Horns fan. He's definitely an Oklahoma hater. But he's a good buddy, good Twitter buddy from a long time ago. So
that's the cool thing about Twitter, man, is we're able to, meet so many good people. That's how obviously you and I have come together. Me and Mr. Myrick, who does, Wednesday night, Red River North on this channel, talks Sooners with Randy Heights. The connections is fun, man. And you see the logo and you see some of the tweets and you're like, that guy's an asshole because he's a Sooner. He's probably just a jerk, and that's how some people look at that app, man. And it's just so much more fun to just look beyond the crimson and cream, the logos, the silly fight song that has like 5 words in total throughout the lyrics, and just to get to know a person, and know what got them interested in that school and why they started to cover that school. And then of course, their ins and outs on thoughts for what that season's going to look like, man. So I always appreciate you being part of the show.
Yeah.
I would love to see Red River, become to the SEC what it is to Texas and Oklahoma as far as just importance and must watch TV every single time that game is being played. I feel that it is a more superior rivalry to Bama and Auburn. I think if you go back the last couple of decades and you look at just the competitiveness of our matchups compared to theirs and what they've meant on a national title implication race, it's a very big matchup, a game that if it was played in November, I think would be clear cut the number one rivalry in college football. I think, I'm wearing burnt orange. I'm biased as hell. I'm willing to say that,
one.
But
yeah,
it's the best,
number one,
the best day of the year, John. So we do have this. It's really early in the year, brother John. I'm not going to ask you to do this, but Mr. McClary is, and so no pressure. But he's asking if you have a prediction for Texas, Ohio State.
Well, let me cover up all this stuff back here and take off my crimson colored glasses for a second. No, I hate picking Texas to win anything, but I feel more confident in their defense than I do Ohio State's going into the year. I think Julian Sands is going to be great. I think that obviously Jeremiah Smith is fantastic. Ohio State's going to have a ton of talent available to it. I just don't know if they're going to be in the same place defensively that they were at the end of last year when they lost. I mean, they lost their 2 best pass rushers, dudes that were really, really good and changed a lot of games for them. They're gone. Do they have those guys ready to roll week 1 to go make life difficult for Arch? It's going to be a difficult environment. I think it's going to be a close game, but if I was going to put my money on it right now, I'd probably lean Texas just because I trust the defense that Texas is bringing to the table a little bit more right now than I do Ohio State's. Will Ohio State's defense be good? Probably. Will they be really good week 1 and good enough to slow down Steve Sarkisian? I don't know about that. So right now, kind of leaning Texas. Don't tell anybody.
Can't tell anybody, Mr. McCleary. We can't clip that one. We'll keep that one here on the channel. I gotta say I agree, man. Sark has shown the ability to scheme pretty well throughout, long off seasons for big matchups. You can go look at
Mhm.
what he did with 2022 Texas and Bama. Bama 18.5 point favorites. They walk out of Austin, skate, just by the hair of their chin, on a last second field goal there. We'll let them get away. You go into Tuscaloosa, win by 2 scores, go into Michigan, and just body the Wolverines. Of course, I don't think that they were quite as Michigan football normally was, and hope that they're back because I like those guys. But I for that reason, and of course the turnover, you couple all that together, and it's got me feeling really confident enough to start offering up some really dumb wager ideas. And if Texas doesn't beat Ohio State, I'll do this type of stuff.
Right.
I haven't locked in one particular idea, but something is coming, man, because I'm very, very confident. I don't want that to be cocky. This is a guy that in 2023, like I predicted us to lose a couple of games throughout the season. Like Texas football is good. I'm going to say it. If I think we're going to struggle, I'll say it. So I hope y'all respect that. But we're beating the Buckeyes, guys. It's we're feeling really, really dang good about that matchup. Arch Manning is not going to have to be a hero that some people think he's going to have to be to win that football game, because as John just said, trust that defense a very good bit, and not many teams, beat Texas under Steve Sarkisian, and then that next opportunity rolls around and we haven't got vengeance on those guys. And I'm not saying it's two different teams, but I promise the Cotton Bowl is, very much on the forefront of many people's minds, and especially mine. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one still mad, but appreciate y'all being here, guys. John, thanks for sharing your thoughts on the horns and getting into that a little bit. I know we talk mostly Oklahoma, man, but it's always fun to talk with you. We'll get you back on
Yeah.
throughout the season. Keep killing it with Locked On Sooners. Anything else, brother, that you'd like to bring up or get at before we let you out of here?
No, man, it's going to be a great season, dude. College football is so much fun. I used to be one of these guys that believed that the NFL was better than college football, but obviously I didn't really, I didn't know. And over the last few years, especially as we've gone into the SEC, college football, man, it's so much better than what the NFL has to offer. And the fact that we get a rivalry game week 0 this year, despite it being overseas in Ireland, it's going to be great, man. It's going to be a great season. Hope everybody has fun. And thanks for letting me be on a part of the show.
Absolutely, brother. You said it. I think pretty much college football over everything is what I'm taking from
Yep.
that. We're going to run with that. So thank you guys for watching. Good luck to John Sooners, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Go like the video, tell a friend to tell a friend. Thank y'all.